Hello guys, and welcome back to All the Young Dudes by Miss King Bean 89. This is part of the double update. I hope y'all had a great week, having a great day. Let's get on with the chapter. Chapter 10, First Year, History. Saturday, 23rd October 1971. Did you just never get taught? Remus shrugged, tired and frustrated. It was a week after the flying lesson, and Sirius had caught him on his own again. He'd been sitting quite happily on his bed, flicking through one of James Quinn's magazines. He liked the moving pictures, even if he still didn't understand the rules, and it was the closest thing to a telly they had at Hogwarts. I got taught, he replied, turning the page, hoping Sirius would take the hint and get lost. He didn't. Remus closed the magazine. I got taught, he repeated, just didn't learn properly. When I look at the words, I don't think I see what everyone else does. It doesn't make any sense. All the letters just keep jumping around and changing. Teachers said I was just thick. No one had much of a fuss about his problems with school at St. Edmund's. They'd barely had any homework, since no one did it anyways. Lots of the boys had problems, either they couldn't or wouldn't be taught. It wasn't as if anyone expected much either way. But how have you been doing it? Sirius was like a dog with a bone. Doing what? Well, everything. All your work here at Hogwarts. Remus looked at him as if he was the one who was stupid. Remus, I haven't been serious. I haven't been doing it. In case you haven't noticed, I'm in detention every night. Well, yeah, obviously. The other day in potions, I saw you. You didn't take any notes, didn't even look at the book or the blackboard, and you still prepared all the ingredients for the cure for boils perfectly. Slughorn gave you 5 points. Remus felt himself blush at the memory. He wasn't used to getting praise from teachers. Oh, that was easy. He shook his head. Sluggy told us how to do it in the lesson before. I just remembered it. Bloody hell, you must have a brilliant memory then. Sirius shrugged. Remus shrugged. He supposed that was true. His teachers at St. Edmund's had remarked more than once that he knew an awful lot of words for someone so dim-witted. Sirius was staring into space now, clearly deep in thought. Remus could practically see the cogs working in his mind. Sometimes Sirius was an entirely closed book. Other times he was so easy to read it was almost funny. If you could read, you'd be as good as me and James. Better, probably. Remus snorted. So modest, Black. Well, you would. Sirius missed the sarcasm completely. Still looking thoughtful. Your wand work is more than natural. If your memory is as good as you say it is, he chewed his lip. I bet there's a spell for it. Remus laughed. You're going to cure me with a spell. Why not? Remus had thought about it already. Of course he had. But he was more aware of the limitations of magic than anyone. After all, he had scars which would not heal and a monthly nightmare which nobody could prevent. Magic can't fix stuff like that. He replied bluntly. Why else does James wear glasses? I think there are spells for eyesight, Sirius said, but they're just not worth the effort, or too dangerous, or complicated or something. It's not just the reading, Remus countered. My writing's crap too. I'm too slow and it comes out all messy. There are definitely spells for that, Sirius said confidently. You can bewitch your quill. I've seen my father do it on official documents. His handwriting's really scratchy normally. Remus was at a loss. Sirius clearly wasn't going to give up. He chewed his lip. Why are you so interested anyways? You're my fellow marauder. We can't have you in detention every day. What if the Slytherins strike back? We'll need your evil mind for pranks. His eyes glittered. Speaking of, I'm assuming you haven't done any of your history homework yet. Nope. Okay, then let's get started. Sirius jumped off the bed and began rooting around his trunk. No, you're not doing my homework for me, Remus protested, standing up himself, folding his arms. Too bloody right I'm not, Sirius replied, withdrawing a heavy book. It was a history of magic. Remus recognized the size and shape. I just fancied refreshing my memory. That's all. So I'm going to sit here and read it aloud, because it helps me study. And if you happened to retain some of it in that enormous brain of yours, then there's not much I can do about it. Remus huffed. Haven't you got something better to do? Where's James anyways? Watching the Gryffindor Quidditch practice, Sirius settled down on his bed, opening the book. Reckons he'll get on the team next year, so he's trying to pick up some tips. Peters followed him, obviously. Now, be quiet, please. I'm trying to work. He cleared his throat. A History of Magic by Bathilda Bagshot. Chapter 1. Ancient Egypt. The Rites and Rituals of Imhotep. And on he went. And on and on. Remus stayed standing for a while, trying to decide whether or not to just walk out of the room and slam the door, but he found that he really wasn't that angry. It was difficult to stay angry with Sirius, no matter how annoying he was. So Remus sat down and listened. It turned out that history magic wasn't that boring after all, not when you understood the basics. Plus, Sirius was considerably more animated than Professor Benz. His voice was clear and steady, never stumbling over the more complicated words or phrases, as if he had read the book 100 times. Remus had once heard him tell James that he was fluent in Latin and Greek. The Black family apparently took pride in that sort of thing. Oh, he plowed chapter after chapter, from the glory Egyptian resurrection charms to cryptic Greek oracles. So magical Mesopotamian priestess, the ancient world opened up in Remus's mind, and he found himself lying back on his bed, arms behind his head, and with his eyes closed, letting Sirius lead him through time. Eventually, the other boy's voice was almost hoarse, and he spoke just above a whisper. Evening had closed around them, and the common room was bathed in a golden glow as the sun set. Halfway through Chapter 5, Tiberius and the Advancements of Roman Battle Magic. Sirius let out a quiet cough and put the book down. I don't think I can study anymore today, he croaked. Remus's eyes snapped open. He sat up blinking. That's okay, he said quietly. It's dinner now. I'm starving. They both got up, stretched, and headed downstairs. James and Peter were waiting for them at the Gryffindor table in their usual seats. How was practice? Sirius asked after draining a goblet of pumpkin juice. His voice had almost returned to normal, only sounding slightly strained. Cracking, James replied cheerfully, sparing a sausage on the end of his fork and using it to scoop up some of the mashed potato. How come you didn't come? Homework, Sirius replied, pouring gravy over his own mash. As they finished their dinner, James regaled them with a blow-by-blow account of the Quidditch practice, listing every player on the team, their strengths and faults, their techniques, and what he would do to improve them. Peter interjected occasionally with his own opinions, which barely differed from James's. Pudding was millionaire shortbread, which neither Sirius or James liked. Remus thought they were mad, and took their distaste as evidence of their snobbery. He'd have eaten theirs too, but Peter got there first, scoffing the lot. I've got some sweets, the small boy offered, digging his robe pockets and withdrawing a bulging brown bag. Mom sent them. Help yourself. Cheers, Pete. They dug in, munching their way through the fizzy Whizbees, chocolate frogs, and flavor-changing gobstoppers happily. Remus helped himself to a few as well, until they were all felt quite sick. "What homework were you doing?" James asked, scratching his chin distractedly. "We'd finished everything for this week." Yeah, I was behind on history. Had to go back and check something." Sirius was scratching too, near his collarbone. Watching them made Remus start to itch. The back of his hand tickled, as if a small insect was crawling all over him. He suddenly thought of the itching powder and looked down, and nearly screamed. The back of his hand was growing thick, dark hair at an alarming rate. He was transforming. It wasn't anywhere near the full moon. How could this be happening? He stood up so suddenly he nearly fell over backwards. He had to get out of here. Fast. "What's up, Lupin?" James stared at him, startled. Remus looked back at him, then at Sirius. They were both growing hair, too. Dark curls sprouted from their faces, their hands and arms, every bit of exposed skin. He gasped, speechless. He ran his tongue over his teeth. They weren't getting any longer. "Oh, bloody hell," James said, looking down at himself, then at the two other boys. "What's going on?" "Peter?" Sirius growled, his face now almost covered in hair. "Are you sure your mom sent those sweets?" Peter, who hadn't had any sweets yet, stared at the both of them and turned red, sputtering. "Well, I thought they were from her. They arrived this morning." "Pete!" James roared. People were looking at them now, turning and nudging each other. Soon the entire dining hall was whispering and pointing at the three incredibly hairy boys at the Gryffindor table. Plenty of people were giggling too, but of course no one was laughing louder than Severus Snape over at the Slytherin benches. "Come on." Sirius stood up, sticking his furry nose in the air with an air of aristocratic dignity that was nothing short of hilarious. "Let's get to the hospital wing. We can plot our revenge later." As they left to howls of laughter from the rest of the Great Hall, Remus cringed shame, covering his face with his hands. Every inch of him was now covered in the same glossy black hair. He didn't find it as funny as James and Sirius seemed to. "Told you they'd strike back," Sirius muttered. That is chapter 10. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great day. Remember to drink water, hydrate or die straight, and if you are straight, hydrate or dihydrate, and make sure to eat 3 meals a day. Love you all. Bye.